The bank manager tore the check in half before the entire lobby, and for 3 seconds, nobody moved. The sound of the paper ripping seemed louder than the conversations, louder than the ringing phones, louder even than the gasp that escaped from the little boy standing beside his father. "You expect me to believe this is real?" the manager demanded, holding the 2 pieces of paper between her fingers. The check clearly showed $5 million. It was issued by one of the most respected investment firms in the country, signed by a man whose name appeared regularly in financial magazines, and made payable to a black single father named Marcus Reed. Yet the bank manager, Evelyn Hart, looked at Marcus as if he had walked into her branch carrying something stolen. Marcus stood quietly in a faded blue shirt, worn black shoes, and an old jacket that had seen better days. His 8-year-old son, Noah, held tightly to his hand, while his 6-year-old daughter, Amara, stood close to his side. Marcus had spent the morning carefully explaining to his children that their lives were about to change, not because money would make them better than anyone else, but because after years of struggling, they might finally have a safe home, better opportunities, and a chance to stop worrying about whether the electricity would be shut off. He had never imagined that the first step toward that future would end with a bank manager ripping his check apart. "Sir," Marcus said calmly, "I understand that you need to verify it." "Verify it?" Evelyn laughed coldly. "This is not a verification issue. This is ridiculous. A man walks in here wearing clothes like that and suddenly claims he has $5 million. The lobby became silent. Marcus slowly looked around. A woman waiting near the teller window lowered her phone. An elderly man frowned. 2 employees exchanged uncomfortable glances. Marcus felt the familiar sting of humiliation, the same feeling he had experienced countless times before, the feeling of being judged before anyone knew his name, his story, or the sacrifices that had brought him there. But he had promised himself that day that he would not lose his dignity, not in front of his children. "My clothes have nothing to do with the check," he replied. Evelyn leaned forward. "Everything about this has something to do with the check. I am responsible for protecting this bank. We receive forged checks every week. People come in here with fake documents and stolen identities. So forgive me if I don't simply accept a piece of paper because you say it belongs to you." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his identification. "You can call the issuing company. I already know what I need to know," Evelyn snapped. "This check is suspicious. Then let your fraud department verify it." "I said the check is suspicious. And I said you can verify it." That was when Evelyn's expression changed. She looked at the check one more time, then looked at Marcus, and something inside her seemed to harden. "You know what? Maybe you should take this somewhere else." Marcus stared at her. "I have an account here." "Not anymore," Evelyn said. "I'm refusing this transaction." Marcus's son, Noah, looked up at him. "Dad, are we still getting a house?" Marcus forced a smile. "We're going to be okay, buddy." But Evelyn heard him. "A house," she said with a mocking smile. "You might want to make sure the check is real before making promises to your children." The words hit harder than the ripped check. Marcus looked down at the 2 pieces of paper in her hand. "Please give me the check." Evelyn smiled. "I can't. It's already destroyed." "You tore it because I believed it was fraudulent. Then you destroyed a financial instrument that did not belong to you." The room went completely quiet. For the first time, Evelyn looked uncertain. "Are you threatening me?" "No," Marcus said. "I'm telling you that you made a mistake." Evelyn's face reddened. Security. A guard near the entrance stepped forward, but before he could reach the counter, the bank's main doors opened. A tall man in a dark navy suit walked into the lobby. He was followed by 2 senior executives and a woman carrying a tablet. The man looked to be in his late 60s, with silver hair and a calm expression that immediately caused several employees to straighten. Evelyn turned toward him, annoyed. "Mr. Collins, I'm dealing with a suspected fraud case right now." The man didn't answer. He was looking at Marcus. For a moment, his expression changed completely. His eyes widened. Then he walked across the lobby. Marcus looked up. The man stopped in front of him. And then, in front of every employee, every customer, and the bank manager who had just destroyed his $5 million check, the bank's regional president lowered his head respectfully. Good afternoon, sir. The entire bank froze. Evelyn's face went pale. Marcus slowly blinked. Mr. Collins? The older man smiled. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. Evelyn stared at Marcus. You know him? Mr. Collins turned toward her. Know him? He looked at the torn check in her hand. Then he looked back at Marcus. Ms. Hart, do you know who you just spoke to? Evelyn opened her mouth, but no words came out. The regional president took a breath. This man is Marcus Reed. Yes, Evelyn whispered. No, Mr. Collins said. You don't understand. Marcus Reed is the founder and majority owner of Reed Community Holdings. A few employees exchanged shocked looks. Mr. Collins continued, the company that recently purchased the controlling interest in this bank's parent corporation. The silence that followed felt unreal. Evelyn stared at him. Then she looked at Marcus. Then back at Mr. Collins. No, she whispered. Marcus's son Noah tugged on his father's shirt. Dad, what does that mean? Marcus gently placed a hand on his son's shoulder. It means we need to have a conversation. Mr. Collins looked at Marcus apologetically. Sir, I am deeply sorry. I was supposed to meet you privately in the executive office. I had no idea you had arrived. Marcus glanced at the torn check. I think the meeting has already started. Evelyn's face had lost all color. Mr. Reed, I didn't know. That was the problem, Marcus said. She swallowed. I was only trying to protect the bank. From what? She had no answer. From a forged check? Yes. Did you verify it? No. Did you contact the issuing company? No. Did you contact my account manager? No. Did you check my identity? You judged me. The words landed harder than shouting ever could. Marcus turned toward the lobby. Every person in this room saw what happened. You didn't see a customer. You saw a black man in worn clothes standing beside 2 children. You saw someone you assumed could not possibly have $5 million. And instead of verifying the document, you decided I had to be lying. Evelyn looked down. Marcus continued, but here's the part you don't know. I didn't become wealthy because someone handed me a fortune. I became wealthy because for 20 years, I worked while people assumed I was less capable than them. I worked night shifts. I slept in my car for a while. I raised my children alone after their mother passed away. I built a company from a small repair shop in a neighborhood everyone else had forgotten. I lost friends. I lost sleep. I lost almost everything before I finally built something that could survive without me. His daughter Amara stepped closer to him. And I still come to the bank wearing the same clothes I wore when I was broke because those clothes remind me where I came from. No one spoke. Then Marcus looked at Evelyn. You tore up my check because you thought I didn't look rich enough to own it. Evelyn's eyes began to fill with tears. I'm sorry. Marcus studied her face. I believe you are. The bank manager looked relieved for half a second. Then Marcus continued. But being sorry doesn't erase what happened. Mr. Collins stepped forward. Sir, the bank will replace the check immediately. We can also. Marcus raised his hand. No. Mr. Collins stopped. Marcus looked at the torn pieces of paper. I don't want a replacement from this branch. Evelyn's face fell. I want something else. What? Mr. Collins asked. Marcus looked around the lobby. I want every employee in this bank to receive training on unconscious bias, customer dignity, and proper fraud verification. I want an independent complaint system. And I want the bank to stop treating people like suspects simply because they don't fit someone's idea of wealth. Mr. Collins nodded slowly. Consider it done. Marcus looked at Evelyn. And I want Ms. Hart to keep her job. Everyone stared at him. Evelyn looked stunned. Marcus continued. But she should not remain in her position without understanding what happened today. Evelyn wiped her eyes. Why would you do that? Marcus looked at his children. Because when I was young, someone gave me a second chance. I promised myself that if I ever had power, I would use it carefully. Evelyn lowered her head. I don't deserve that. Maybe not, Marcus said. But neither did I once. The regional president looked at Marcus. Sir, there is one more thing. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Mr. Collins reached into a folder and removed a document. Your $5 million check was actually the first payment from the acquisition deal. But the board has approved an additional donation in your name. Marcus frowned. Donation? Mr. Collins smiled. To the community center you built. Marcus stared at him. How much? $5 million. The lobby erupted in whispers. Marcus stood completely still. Noah's eyes widened. Amara grabbed her father's hand. Dad, she whispered, are we rich? Marcus smiled softly. No, sweetheart. He looked around at the bank, at the employees, at the manager who had once judged him by his clothes, and at the people watching from the lobby. We're responsible. Evelyn began crying again. Marcus turned to leave, but before he reached the doors, she called out, Mr. Reed. He stopped. She walked toward him slowly. I know this won't fix what I did, she said, but I want you to know something. Today, I saw exactly how wrong I was. Marcus nodded. That's where change begins. Then he walked out of the bank with his children beside him. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright, warm, and impossible to ignore. Noah looked up at him. Dad, yes. Did you know that man was going to call you, sir? Marcus smiled. No. Were you scared? Marcus thought about the torn check, the embarrassed faces, his children watching him, the old memories of being judged, dismissed, and underestimated. Yes, he said honestly. A little. But you didn't cry. Marcus looked at his son. Sometimes being strong doesn't mean you don't feel hurt. Then what does it mean? Marcus took both of his children's hands. It means you don't let someone else's opinion decide who you are. Behind them, inside the bank, Evelyn stood by the window, watching the family disappear down the sidewalk. The next morning, the bank's headquarters announced major changes to its customer service policies. Employees received new training. Complaints were investigated independently. And the branch manager who had once torn up a $5 million check became the person who personally reviewed every complaint involving unfair treatment. But Marcus never forgot that day. Not because the bank president called him sir. Not because he had $5 million. And not because the entire lobby finally realized who he was. He remembered it because for one brief moment, the world had shown him exactly how quickly people could judge someone based on what they saw. And he knew that the real victory was not proving that he was rich. The real victory was proving that his worth had never depended on whether anyone believed he could be. Years later, Marcus would tell his children the same thing whenever life became difficult. Never confuse the way someone treats you with the value of who you are. Because sometimes the person being underestimated is the very person sitting quietly at the center of the biggest deal in the room. And sometimes the person who tears up your check has no idea that the man standing in front of them is the one who owns the future of the entire bank. And as Marcus walked out of the bank with his children beside him, the $5 million check was no longer the most important thing he carried. He carried the quiet victory of a man who had been judged by his clothes, his skin, and the assumptions of a stranger, but had never allowed those judgments to define him. Behind him, the bank manager finally understood that the man she had treated like a fraud was the very man her own boss had called sir. But Marcus didn't need anyone's respect because of his money. He had earned something far greater long before that day. The strength to remain humble, the courage to keep going, and the wisdom to never judge a person by what they appear to have. Because sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one carrying the biggest secret in the room. And sometimes the greatest revenge is simply walking away with your dignity intact. If this story touched your heart, remember, never judge someone by their appearance, because you never know the battles they fought or the future they are quietly building.